Dr. Sam will roll in.
I'm here on Salt. All right, everyone, we will reconvene the Regional Services meeting. We're on R5. I'd like to welcome Mr. Gervais. Sorry, was that correct?
Nicely done.
I was over here practicing it. I was going to super anglicize it, but I thought, no, let's try and get it right. Welcome. He's going to give us an update on our windstorm event and the resulting damage to our system, and I guess a path forward. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, directors. So it may seem a little odd that we're here discussing the December 20th windstorm at the end of March, but it is what it is. We do feel it's important to be able to share the information about the lessons learned and a little bit about what we're doing moving forward with that information in mind. So just a summary of the agenda we're looking at today. We're going to play you a BC Hydro video that I think will kind of cast us backwards in time just to be able to relive that event and bring it to the forefront of our mind, at least for the some better appreciation of this presentation. We're going to review the debrief. There's going to be a few notable facts, review the debrief objectives that we had, some key questions asked and answered, some already actioned items, and next steps. And I'll have questions for you at the end. So what we're going to do here is just watch the video, and it's just about 6 minutes long. Has anybody seen the video? Wonderful. That's great. It's not as jazzy as the coffee mountain bike video shown this morning, but it's way more exciting than the asset management video. I love asset management, so holy smokes. I just can't use, the mouse won't grab. I want to minimize this.
Oh, right. I'll get it. Just
Okay, and get right out of there and go to the,
right.
there we go, and press play.
Salt Spring Island following the big storm we experienced on December 20th. Salt Spring saw some of the worst damage from the storm. I'm pleased to say that after 11 days, our crews have been able to get the lights back on for the final customers affected by this event. However, responding to this event took a massive effort beyond any BC Hydro has had to undertake before. It required an unprecedented mobilization of resources and people. This was one of the worst storms BC Hydro has experienced, with the most infrastructure damage and total customers impacted over the past 20 years. In total, we had over 730,000 customers impacted overall, and at the peak of the storm, 380,000 were without power. That's larger than the storm season of 2006, which impacted Vancouver Island and devastated Stanley Park in Vancouver, or the windstorm of August 2015. One of the reasons this storm ended up being so bad is that this was different weather than we've typically experienced here in BC. The wind came from multiple directions, and it affected 4 geographic regions at once: Vancouver Island, the Gulf Islands, the Lower Mainland, and the Fraser Valley. This presented a big challenge. Typically, we're able to move crews quickly between the regions so that we can get extra help to the places most affected. Moving this many crews, trucks, heavy machinery, and materials, all needed to rebuild the system over the many islands and regions, added an additional layer of complexity. The winds were also very strong, measuring over 100 kilometers per hour in some areas on the mainland and Vancouver Island. The ground in many areas was completely saturated from a period of heavy rain preceding the storm, which contributed to instability of the trees and the soil. All of these conditions combined to create damage that was more significant than any single storm we've seen before. In any storm event, our top priority is safety. Our crews work closely with first responders, particularly in the first 24 hours, to address safety issues like down wires and to restore critical infrastructure like water treatment plants and hospitals. Right at the outset, our crews were well prepared and positioned in areas where we expected the storm to hit. However, the amount of damage was so significant that it took several days to complete full damage assessments in some of the hardest hit areas. Much of this was due to a number of inaccessible roads which were completely covered in trees and vegetation. We needed to survey the damage in some remote areas by helicopter. We had thousands of pieces of equipment damaged, including poles, cross arms, and transformers. We had over 5,000 trouble orders for outages, down wires, trees on our lines, and low wires, all of which had to be dispatched. For comparison, we usually get around 300 trouble orders in an average storm. And that's a huge amount of work, and why restoration took so long in some areas. On the Gulf Islands alone, more than 500 spans of wire came down. Up to 100 poles were replaced. And while this was a challenging event, we mobilized quickly, activating crews and operation centers across all the affected regions. We redeployed crews from other areas of the province to Vancouver Island and reached out to other utilities for assistance. We coordinated our major operations directly out of Nanaimo and Surrey. As a result, we restored around 70% of affected customers, or over 500,000 customers, within 24 hours of the storm hitting on December 20th. At BC Hydro, we debrief after every storm event. This is a regular part of our operations where we reflect on what we can do better. This storm is no different. We already know that some customers had challenges learning about the status of their outage, and that some customers experienced challenges when reporting down power lines in their communities. Safety is our number one priority, and we'll be taking a close look at the down power line issue as we begin to debrief on how this event unfolded. And we will be looking for ways to continue to improve how we ensure that the most up-to-date information is available for people as quickly as possible. We know this event has had a significant impact on our customers during the holiday season. Throughout the event, I've been humbled by the support that communities across the province have shown to our crews. I want to thank all of our customers for their understanding and patience as we work to bring the power back safely to everyone impacted by this storm. I also want to thank all the crews who worked long hours away from their families so that our customers could get power back just as quickly as we possibly could. I also want to give a thank you to the many partners who helped us, from the road crews clearing the roads to first responders who helped keep people safe, BC Ferries, who were instrumental getting our crews to where they they needed to go, and all the local businesses that have helped provide accommodations and food, and the other utilities and contractors who stepped up with additional crew support to speed restoration. We recognize how difficult the storm event was for many people. Responding to this storm required a massive mobilization of resources and an enormous effort to make the necessary repairs in a relatively short period of time. That said, as with any event, we are looking at how we can further improve our storm response. I want to assure you that when the next event that Mother Nature throws at us hits, BC Hydro will be here and be ready to support our customers. Thank you very much.
Okay, so as I said, the intention of that was to cast us back a little bit in time. Obviously, BC Hydro was the primary utility that is the primary utility that provides electricity. The loss of electricity during the December 20th storm was delivered the greatest impact, somewhere between 3, 4, up to 8 days for a lot of area residents. So just a few, and I mean, the message there is the largest windstorm, unprecedented largest windstorm in BC Hydro's history. And for me, it wasn't until I was able to read the report, see the presentation, that that point was hammered home and really the magnitude of it was made clear. Just a couple of notable facts here. 350,000 or about 80% of all BC Hydro customers on Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands were impacted. 461 incidents reported to our Central Island Firecom system. This is our 911 system that we subscribe to as a CVRD. The average number for a 24-hour period is 45 calls. The previous high was 130. And December windstorms in British Columbia caused $37 million in insured damage, according to the Insurance Bureau of Canada. Of course, the one fact that is left out there is the uninsured damage, which we, of course, don't know the totality of that number. So our division, Public Safety, undertook a debrief with our CVRD colleagues and other stakeholders. We met with a number of people and to learn from stakeholders what they experienced. We encouraged through that process self-reflection, open and honest feedback, so in a safe environment, so we could hear the clear facts. We encouraged the idea of sharing ideas and raising awareness of alternate approaches, and ultimately the goal was to strengthen the CVRD's readiness for and business continuity capability during emergency events. The key questions asked and answered were, what did we do well and what needs improvement? This is classic debrief language straight out of national service, provincial services. So what went well? So the CVRD's role in leading and emergency management during a significant weather incident was well coordinated and executed, particularly given the timing just prior to the Christmas holidays. A number of staff worked during off hours and through scheduled vacations to ensure the CVRD was able to play a leadership role in regional response efforts. And no responding staff or workers were injured during our response to the event. Further, no interruptions to CVRD water and sewer services occurred. Peerless Road and Mead Creek transfer stations extended hours of operations to accommodate the increase in woody debris and spoiled food being dropped off. CVRD provided residents free disposal of spoiled food, and Parks and Trail staff and contractors worked tirelessly to remove identified safety hazards in a timely fashion. There were numerous communities were proactive and opened warming centers for residents. Strong relationships with key partners and contractors was reflected in their response, particularly given the holiday season. This was something that was mentioned over and over again, was that our department staff have done a key job in building strong relations with our contractors, and our contractors came through swiftly, in numbers, and to execute a good recovery in a timely fashion. And lastly, CVRD emergency telecommunications system withstood the winds and performed without any issues. All of the towers that we have throughout the region, repeaters, etc. So what needs improvement? So personal preparedness and resiliency. We will continue to promote the need for residents and businesses to be prepared for the to be resilient during emergency events. Communications, there's a need for greater information and communication among first responders, CVRD staff, stakeholders, and the public. Subscription to Civic Ready and will continue to promote Civic Ready, the CVRD's mass notification system. So some items that we've already actioned: EOC staffing. Our division will ramp up our EOC management team sooner during emergency events moving forward. We'll enhance our communications internally to staff and the board, and externally to the public and stakeholders. And as an isolated operational matter, our Ingram Street generator, which encountered a failure during the storm, we've changed our fuel type, which we now use. We've incorporated an automated notification system, and we've increased our testing schedule in low temperatures to ensure that genset is operational during, particularly in this case, low temperature events. As an add-on to that, we've actually recently just completed electrical capacity testing of both Ingram and Island Savings Center, just to test the genset capabilities during the load we feel is necessary for an emergency response, and both gensets passed our testing. And then lastly, just already actioned items, CVRD emergency coordinator continues to work on improving personal preparedness. Sybil, has begun working with communities towards improving personal preparedness and resiliency during emergency events. That's an ongoing activity. We've had a number of successful community engagement discussions since. So next steps, so our division, Public Safety Division, will compile all this feedback into a debriefing report that we will use for operational purposes. CVRD Emergency Coordinator will continue to promote and support individual and community emergency preparedness and self-resiliency efforts. And we'll continue to deliver emergency training program to CVRD staff, board, and key stakeholders. And that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. I'll start with Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chevet. Civic Ready, what is that little card I used to hand out? I had a lot of emergency preparedness meetings a few years ago, and it was a little card that I had that said they had to sign up at CVRD, but I don't remember it being called Civic Ready. So is this something new?
Great question. So Civic Ready is is a mass notification system that the CVRD subscribes to. The intent of it, if you, myself, anybody subscribes to it, it's on our website. If you go and you click on it and you sign up now, you can register to receive notifications for the type of emergencies, the type of interruptions that you would like to be notified about. And it comes through on your cell phone as a text message. It comes through as a email. It can whatever you choose in the framework provided there. And I'm not sure about the card.
Yeah, because
Okay.
we were handing that.
Same
We
one?
were handing them. It is the same one.
Okay.
Because they were signing up, and those were handy, because I
Right.
would have them at meetings, and people were grabbing them to
Yeah.
be able to sign up. Okay, thank you.
So we know we are under-prescribed right now. If any of
Okay.
you, and I know a lot of you are attending community meetings, you're either attending them or helping to organize them. If any of you are speaking with people, encourage them to go to our website, the emergency management page, and register for the mass notification system.
And do you still have those little cards? Because they were handy, if you know.
I will learn that
Okay, okay,
while I leave and come
okay.
back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Acton.
Thank you. I was going to make that point too. It is undersubscribed, and I mentioned it to Chris in communications already that I hope we're going to try and grow it, because I think it's only around 800 or something who have registered for it. And it's an amazing resource, and I myself have tried to get people to sign up at community meetings, but really, I think we have to hold their hand. We need to be set up at the farmer's market with a laptop and really get people to do it and give them a pen for doing it, because it's a great resource and people are paying for it, and it can come in handy. But I do have a question. So I didn't notice you mention what the community thinks we should do in those instances. Like, my community, within a few hours, were messaging me saying, "Where's the keys to the community center?" We're like, "What are we doing? We need to get organized here." So, have you reached out to the public and maybe, I don't know, looked at that side of things?
Okay, so first and foremost, it's important to remember that every event is different. And it should not be lost on anybody, I'm sure it's not lost on anybody in this room, that this particular event was particularly unique because A, we lost power, and B, to a large degree, we lost the ability to transport. A lot of people in the rural community areas weren't able to get from one area to another because there was a road blockage, which unto itself created a problem that we haven't encountered before, quite frankly. We have somewhat of a centralized model where we have a plan in place for people to converge to certain locations during an emergency event and provide services at those centralized locations. This particular event taught us that we may not always be able to get to those centralized locations. I could use the example of UBO wasn't able to get to Lake Cowichan, which is where we set up the warming center. So what we are, the answer, to answer your question, we recognize, for lack of a better term, that deficiency or weakness in the plan, and we are now building out from there. What do we see as the solution? It is, I don't believe as an organization we have the capacity to turn every potential facility, large grouping facility, into a warming center in the event of an emergency. It just would require hundreds of thousands of dollars. So our messaging right now and what we're doing as a division staff is really encouraging community uplifting, self-resiliency, personal preparedness, and effectively a neighborhood watch program, if you will, but not under the banner of danger in your community, but more so for emergency preparedness. We're working with small neighborhoods so that they can build plans to, if one person's got a fireplace, when electricity goes down, we all know, go to 112 Green Street because Mary has a fireplace. And so that community uplifting model. So we are actively messaging that and working with communities. Sybil, our emergency coordinator, has a very busy complement of community meetings that she's having with all sorts of organizations and agencies.
Sorry, and just to interject quickly, I think Mr. Carruthers I just wanted to mention, Mary does have a great fireplace too, if you need, Mr. Carruthers.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Gervais was just saying. It's really about managing the public's expectations in an event like that. It's interesting when we're covered under the provincial emergency program when we activate a reception center when you have evacuations, when people are evacuated from their homes. This was a very different circumstance. People were not evacuated from their homes. They were required to shelter in place, where it became, I think, quite a critical public health and safety issue was where the prolonged power outage was resulting in people being cold, not having access to services in their homes, and that created a whole different scenario. But as Mr. Gervais said, I think the communities need to understand that there's a role to play in each individual community, and whether that is going out and investing in generators so that community halls can be powered in power outages, provisioning supplies to have on hand, to expect that the CVRD is going to be out being able to pull people out of apartment buildings and that kind of thing. It's just, we just simply do not have the capacity. So as Keir said, self-reliance, preparation, preparedness is going to be key moving forward.
Sorry, Mr. Gervais wants to add something, and then I'll go back to Director Acton.
And I just add to
Or
that.
just
now-
still answering your first question.
Yeah, no, and I am still answering that. And just to add to that, the biggest example I can give is Lake Cowichan Chamber of Commerce. Shortly after the event, saw a need. They were an organization that, through one channel or another, identified that there was a number of unanswered questions in their own community. That's not to say they were questions that we needed to answer. There were just there were unanswered questions, and they created a forum, literally a town hall forum, with a stage full of agency representatives. Everyone, BC Hydro, we were there. CVRD was there on the stage. Actually, had the lion's share of the podium for the night. And all the utility providers, and I use the term community uplifting, they organized it. It was for the community, by the community, and the biggest message that they sent that night was that we as a community need to be looking out for ourselves. This is not the responsibility of any one agency. And we are a stakeholder. We as a CVRD will be a stakeholder in helping them get to be more self-reliant. But I walked away from that evening thinking this was the picture-perfect delivery of an initiative, again, by the community for the community.
Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, Sybil has come to our community and spoke about it recently. But it wasn't clear to myself, or if we could, so that I could relay it back to the community, and if we could also message this out, how long should people or neighbors be able to take care of themselves? Because I feel like my community reacted really quickly. So what can we expect?
So the provincial, so the standard that we have been messaging and supporting is 72 hours of personal preparedness. That being said, our own staff are commenting about how we are attending conferences and workshops where the narrative is 1 to 2 weeks in looking into the future and having some of these extended events. And you don't have to look all that far to see some of the communities around the province that have been impacted by wildfires, flooding, and who knows what's coming in the future in the way of extended period windstorms. To say it's 3 days, 72 hours doesn't appear to be that long of time, really.
Thank you. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I picked up on some interesting undercurrents post windstorm, and I think I'm looking at it almost as an opportunity for us to maybe do some work in areas that I don't know, may have lapsed over the last little while. And I too attended that event in Lake Cowichan, and you know, and maybe I think I might have spoken a little lightly about this issue at one of our other long days, where in some areas it was deemed to be a real crisis, and in other areas, the power's out. It wasn't that big a concern. But what I noticed was that was a little different in this event was, you know, for the most part, in the Cowichan Lake area, people have been used to the power being out. It wasn't a huge deal, and it was great that the warming center at the school popped up. There's a lot of usage there. But there seems to be this narrative of people thinking that there should be more services brought to them, as opposed to that idea of, like, I've always thought that you have to be prepared to be on your own 5 to 7 days. It's just because of where I live. It may be a little different closer to the core, but I see that there might be an opportunity for us to, maybe as a board, to hone our message a little bit, to be able to share with people that there is a personal responsibility factor in this, and that we're not in any position to be coming in and providing a lot of those services that I guess some people are coming to expect from their local governments to provide. And so I don't see us being able to change that anytime soon. We had a discussion about if we were to put a gen set in every community hall, what would those costs be? And these are not little gen sets. These are really expensive generator systems that would be of huge cost, that would be used on a very limited basis. So is there some work that we can do to, as I say, maybe hone our message, make it clear that that we're not going to be able to jump in and provide everything that people are maybe expecting? They have an increased expectation. I think there's an opportunity here, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
So, yeah, thank you, Director Morrison. I agree with everything you've said. So my public safety colleagues and I would say that public safety emergency preparedness it's a form of insurance, and we all know how much we love our insurance. We barely pay attention to it. Changing the narrative or tweaking the narrative is a constant challenge, and trying to get some pickup, some uptake on personal preparedness. I would liken it to how long it took us to put a seatbelt on or to stop drinking and driving. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to compare them, but it's that challenging a system to get people to say, you need to have your household personally prepared to be able to sustain this event, this event, this event. You need to be prepared to pick everything up and leave. You need to be prepared to stay in place and not be able to go outside and do things. So it is a challenge. Complacency is the devil that we in emergency management battle and have been battling for forever. To your point, yes, we recognize both the challenge and the opportunity that is currently before us on the heels of the wildfire epidemic that has been in British Columbia over the last few years, on the flooding epidemic, and more recently directly in our region, the windstorm event, and even this last little snow event we had. We have an opportunity to strike while the iron's hot, and we are.
Thank you. Moving on, Director Smith.
Through the chair to staff, I'd like to thank you for all the work and all the people at this table who spent their time working on a plan for our communities during that period. One of the things I have is my area and I have the islands, and I know that the people on Thetis Island really appreciated the warming center, but the majority of them couldn't get there because of their situation with the trees and the roads. In Saltaire, we also had situations where people couldn't exit, but as a community, I felt that a lot of our communities pitched in with each other, and I think they helped each other within their own streets, and that a lot of the people that are struggling are maybe the people that are new to the CVRD and that they don't quite have that understanding. They've moved from a position of the city and they now love where they've bought, but they aren't prepared for this. I know I'm having an upcoming emergency preparedness workshop in May, and I think we really need to reach out to our communities and make sure that everyone understands, whether they've lived there all their lives, and those that are new just yesterday need to be aware that it's a lovely area, but we do need to be able to be sustainable on our own. And I thank you, and I thank all your team that has worked on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Marsh.
So I'll pass.
Thank you. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had Director Smith just reminded me, we also had a one-pager for area directors that if you were new in the community, it just gave them an outline of all the CVRD, everything in CVRD, a picture of yourself, and we had those not too long ago. And I wondered if those could be resurrected and just added the component of the emergency preparedness. Maybe it was even on there, I'm not sure, but we do have that template. So that would be something as a director that I would take with me, as well as those cards that are really handy if you're, walking your dog or whatever and you see somebody who's just moved in. That's helpful to help staff too on our own. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Staples.
In terms of recognizing capacity and community need during storms, that one of the things that I really noticed was that just like in any emergency situation, people want to gather together to sort of compare what's going on, to check in, to talk about things. And I think that that's a really important thing for us to consider. Whether, I know at Duncan, this is something that we're going to be talking about in terms of our city, but thinking of no one having the capacity to do everything in every region. There's a lot of, whether it's community halls or church organizations or neighborhood watch programs or other things that we can each connect with, to have something set up so that even if it's not the regional district or the city or Ladysmith or anyone operating it, that everyone knows that there's a place that they can go to for information, and so that information can be directed there, because that was a huge problem for people. Lots of people just didn't have access to information, and they want to be able to come together, especially like 2 weeks. That's a long time. Even 3 or 4 days is a long time. So I think that's just something to consider, is how could we each do that in the areas that we're in, and have that place identified so that when something happens in every area, everyone knows where you go and who coordinates it and how that works. That can be figured out later, but I think that that's something to consider.
Mr. Gervais?
Just as a follow-up to that, part of my background has been doing what's called community asset mapping, and it's just that, and it's not just specific to emergency management. It's about identifying the assets. Many of you may have partaken in this process before, but it's about looking at your community and looking at it through different lenses, whether it be recreation, social services, emergency management, healthcare, education, what have you, and identifying the different assets. And it can be a very intriguing process to learn in the case of emergency management and where shelters may come out of the earth. I have space for 20 people. I have a wood burning furnace in the basement. I'd love to sort of host people. That type of community engagement, again, as Mr. Carruthers and Director Morrison, I think, have mentioned, to be mobilizing communities to be self-resilient, to be working amongst themselves, looking out for the vulnerable populations is the task at hand. And again, we will play a role in helping educate and inform our communities as best as we can as a division.
Thank you. I have Director Marsh and Director McGonigal.
Yes, thank you, Chair Stone. I was thinking about, I came home 2 days after the storm from Mount Washington, and I still had charged phones and stuff. And I noticed when I went in Chemainus, they have a couple of social media things. There were a lot of people that were doing the kind of things that people are talking here. I don't know how they got their phones charged, although I do know CVRD did allow that at certain places. But I'm wondering if we could, any of us who know in our area,
could let the CVRD know what those pages are, and we could start using them as well as other conventional methods of communicating to get people thinking this way. Because even old folks are beginning to be on social media more. And, you know, I just think of, God forbid, the day that the big earthquake hits. It's going to be a lot more than 1 or 2 weeks that some of our people, and I hadn't thought of this until seeing the BC Hydro thing, because I don't live rurally. I'm in a city, so I'm thinking, yeah, a couple of weeks, you know. But if you're out where Director Nicholson lives or many other parts of the CVRD, I would imagine it could be a really long time for help. So anyway.
Good points. Director McGonigal.
Thank you, and I think on reflection of the December event, whether you call it an emergency situation or an inconvenience, whatever you want to classify it as, I think it just reiterates the need for self-preparedness updates. Convincing the provincial emergency preparedness to maybe update their criteria from 72 hours to 7 days. When you look at some of the areas on the islands that were out for 8 days, just think, as Director Marsh had said, if this was a true emergency event, an earthquake or a forest fire situation, you would be impacted much longer than the average of 58 or 72 hours. I know the collaborative approach with school districts and municipalities for opening those warming centers was well received, not perhaps to the extent that the need was there, but the people that could make it made it there. And I think that was an opportunity for community building as well, to encourage people to look at personal preparedness and how you would move forward in a much bigger emergency situation. So I would like to lobby the, and I have talked to Ms. Sanderson about the personal preparedness update from 72 hours to 7 days at least. That's what we should be prepared for. Because even Lake Cowichan, we have indoor plumbing, but we are a remote community.
You can always get out through that circle route, not in that windstorm. No. And if you're in Yellow Point, you do always have Mary's house. I don't have anyone else on my speakers list. I think, you know, it was all well received. Thank you so much for the presentation. I think that definitely, I like to see that we're reviewing it and have some good direction. And I think the other suggestions from the board, and just to your point, Mr. Director McGonigal, I know that I've seen some tweets and stuff from Emergency Management BC that they are actually looking at updating from the lessons learned, especially reflecting on, like you said, there's a likelihood with the climate change issues and earthquake stuff that we'll deal with a much bigger emergency within our lifetimes for sure, if not on the near horizon. So they, I think, are updating and trying to provide more tools for us to become self-prepared and self-reliant in those tough situations. So again, thank you for the report, and I believe we will be moving on. Mr. Barry.
Moving on to R6, a report from the Recycling and Waste Management Division regarding an amendment to the Solid Waste Management Charges and Regulations Bylaw number 2108, and it's recommended to the board that Bylaw 4273, Solid Waste Management Charges and Regulations Amendment Bylaw, be considered for 3 readings and adoption.
Thank you. Director Marsh. Moved by Director Marsh, seconded by Director Marcotte. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Now the fun really starts. Mr. Barry.
R7, a report from the Finance Division regarding the 2019 Regional Grant and Aid applications.
Here we go.
Are we having anyone facilitate this for us, Mr. Barry? Ms. Solder? Mr. Director Kuhn.
As I understand, the amount that we decided on is the maximum amount, and I understand we don't really have to disperse. We could hold back. And I'm wondering, my thought process is this. We made a fairly sick compromise as far as I'm concerned, because as it turns out now, our applications are what, 430,000 or something like this, and we have 75,000 available. It would have been an awful lot better if we had just scrapped the whole program, because no matter how this is going to turn out, we're going to get complaints. So we can't win, no matter how many favors we do to even smaller organizations. Well, we'll accommodate you. Others will just shake their heads and say, how could you possibly do that? Why did you even let us apply when you only have that much available? So I want to put this on the table. My move would be to hold back any disbursements. And that's the end of that. And that I would like to make that motion, actually.
So the motion, Mr. Barry, did you pick that up? Would be to deny all the grant and aid applications. I would presume that would be the cleanest resolution. So that's been moved by Director Kuhn. Do we have a seconder? And that dies on the floor. Good attempt, though, Director Kuhn.
You chickens, you.
Lucky for us, that's not a one director vote, but
I'd love that, yes. That'll be the next motion.
so I'll turn it over to Ms. Solder and see if she can help us facilitate what will be a somewhat awkward process, as usual.
So, I will start with my report. So we did send out, we did receive 22 grant applications. The grant and aid policy was revamped through a committee and was approved in November of 2017. So it changed the process for 2018, and that process carried forward to 2019. I do believe there was some issue with the way that the process happened in 2018, but this is the existing policy, so it's the one that we went with. We did, as I say, have 22 applications totaling, as you're exactly right, they're $437,900 worth of funds. Our budget for this year is $75,000. All applications were sent to the board. Looking at the current criteria in the policy, there is one organization in particular that does not meet the current criteria. So the Wooden Boat Society is a grant function, and the current policy specifies that organizations who receive regular requisitions do not qualify for a grant and aid. However, as the board does have the ability to waive policy should they choose, I did include that with the entire package of grant applications for your review. So the applications were sent out with the criteria that's included in the policy, and directors were asked to read and rank them and return the information to me to compile. I did receive some feedback, but I received feedback from 6 directors. And not all of them ranked all of the projects. Some ranked one, some ranked a few. Some gave some dollar values that they would like to distribute. Some ranked and gave dollar values. So I have summarized it, but I'm not sure how useful that is for the discussion today, and I will leave that to the direction of the board.
Ouch. Well, and I'm guilty. I didn't get an opportunity to submit it, and frankly, I just got last evening to read through. The challenge that I have, to the committee is that I don't believe, and I know these are all personal evaluations, that many of them are truly regional in nature. I think it's a very wide gulf to say that many of those applications could be considered for regional grants and aid, specifically if they're segmented from the population. They're meant to serve a very specific area of the, and it's very clear in the policy that at very least they should serve a wide range of electoral areas and municipalities, and favor would be, I guess that's my interpretation, though, favor would be given to those who serve the entire regional district. And by those metrics, from my estimation, there are very few actually that are eligible under that criteria. Now, that's subjective to each director, so we all have to make those judgment decisions. But I'm willing to take some advice from the committee because I don't think we have a great place to start. Director Smith and then Director Yanni DiNardo, McGonigal, and Kuhn.
So one of the items that's on the list is for Thetis Island, and I know lots of people must consider an island an island. But I would like to remind you that it is a large amount of the regional district does use Thetis Island, their community center there. It's a not a taxation-based hall, community center, and I'd like to point out for the last 8 years, 1.7 million has been allocated to the regional grant and aid, and in Area G, 0 funds have been allocated to any organization in Area G. And I think that it's important that we recognize all the different areas, and they have been recognized over the last 8 years. I think it's important that people realize that on an island, you have all the people that come from the other areas to work, to vacation, the boats, the people that are constantly using the different islands, and the other islands use this area as a centralized area too. So I would support the Thetis Island application, as I feel that they represent a really good area in areas of regional services, because they do provide regional services within their small community by including everyone who comes and goes from that area. So I know that the application is for 50,000, but if there was agreement within the board, I know that we could use a smaller amount. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go through the speakers list, and then I have and I have you next, Director Yanni DiNardo. And since we didn't quite do our homework as a majority, and I'm guilty, so I'm looking at myself here, I may have some suggestions for process that could help us move it through. We don't have that high of a number of applications, and I have maybe something that could be helpful, but I'll go through the speakers list. So I have Directors Yanni DiNardo, McGonigal, Marsh, Morrison, and I'll come back to Director Kuhn, and then I have an idea if you're willing to entertain it. So Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you. An idea would be great, because my idea, I know I scratched on a piece of paper and sent it to Port Talitha, my top, and it was over the amount too, but I thought we could go down some, which I agree with Director Smith about Thetis Island, but 50,000 is just way too out there. But I also thought that we should go to places that really get left out, like I had Lake Cowichan 75th, the Trailblazers in Lake Cowichan, like certain ones, and I had Ladysmith Historical Society. Like, I think we need to do a well-rounded, like 7,000, 5,000, and scattered all over the region. And that's where I kind of went when I knew that the Wooden Boat Society wasn't able in the criteria. So, and then we don't have to go to that amount. So I'm looking forward to some way of getting this out there, or if we can start. I was going to start with Thetis Island for 10,000. Like, I don't know if we want to start.
Okay, so if I can, I'll go through this really quick. I think there's good advice, and that might play into what I was recommending, but I'll go to Director McGonigal, and then Marsh, Morrison, Kuhn, and Acton. So
Thank
Director
you.
McGonigal.
Thank you. Even with technical difficulties where I could not open the matrix on an Apple device, I printed it, did my scoring matrix, scanned it, and returned it. So I was one of the less than 50% of the directors who did his homework. Thank you.
Thanks for contributing with so much value to the conversation by chastising your fellow directors.
But as a classifier, we will go around this table and we will champion the ones that we feel are regional.
And I have a way to facilitate that expediently, I believe.
Each one of us will bow the merits of those, whether it's Cobble Hill, whether it's Saltaire. I have 3 people that went to Saltaire, so it must be regional. As long as the regional grant and aids resides in this body, that will be the process, despite the policy that is currently here, which we deviated from last year. Not we, because I wasn't here, but until it is a separate and non-elected body that perhaps makes those decisions with recommendations similar to a commission, and we do have the final say, we will go around the table expressing our interest in personal regional grants and aid, which we feel perhaps our areas have been lacking in the past.
A lot of latitude for you, Mr. Director McGonigal, but thank you. I will go to Director Marsh, Morrison, Kuhn, and Acton. And
sure how this was gonna go. I thought I might be the only one who didn't do their homework and send it in. So I'd actually like to pass in favor of hearing a process. I have added up the things that I would support and the amounts, but I think we all might have done that while we're sitting here. So I'll pass in favor of waiting to
Thank
hear
you.
for some kind of a process.
Director Morrison.
I'll try to be brief. So in the time that I've been here, I've heard just about all of it. And, you know, last year was very unsatisfying as far as the process went. We had a brand-new policy and we promptly ignored it. There was a policy in place before that, and that apparently wasn't satisfying to some people either. I do know that in the past, we've dedicated or allocated time to coming here, fighting for the ones that we thought were important. We did that. It was painful. People got engaged and emotional, and we finished, and it was done for another year. As difficult and challenging as that was, that's kind of our job. If we go to another process, great. I'm just concerned that there's going to be a lot of subjectiveness in this and what we end up deciding, and I guess that's fine too. And I think that we should be willing and prepared for those of us that have our community grant and aid functions with a few dollars in them to be able to step up and assist some of those groups that are unsuccessful today. I've had to do that in the past. I've had support from other directors who have assisted with the Windfest one as an example. I'm gonna obviously cheer for that one, but you know, we've got work to do, and I'm not sure that passing it off to another group in the future is the right way to do it or not. But I'm all ears to hear what our chair has to say as far as a path forward. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'll go to Director Acton and Director Kuhn. Director Acton.
Oh, I have to go before you have the answer.
No, you can pass.
I should.
We can
Should I
pass and I can
wait?
come back to you.
Okay.
Director Kuhn.
Oh, wow, what an honor. Now that we're going to do it anyway, so, God. My suggestion is just to go item by item down the list. And I would suggest we just concentrate on the smaller ones. We don't
Okay.
entertain the big ones.
So
Okay.
before, and I'll go back to the committee and just say, do you want to give a bit of input? But I just want you to hear me out, because this is actually how we did it 2 years ago. And I don't know, for those of you who remember, we actually got it done quite quickly, and it prevented a lot of animosity and angst between us. And basically, we went around the table, everybody set a number for each one. If we had a majority, we went with it. The ones we didn't, we went back to. And that prevented a lot of animosity and fighting back and forth and trying to go on big speeches about justifying why we believe this group should get how much money. And in a lot of, and we whittled it down to a few, and it actually worked quite well, and it removed a lot of the subjectivity, at least in terms of arguing back and forth between why I think you're right and I think you're wrong, from and it just expedites the process, and it can get us down to you know, the final 2 or 3 that we want to maybe make a passionate plea about. Because if we do it one by one, and I sit here and write speakers lists, we're gonna be here for days. So I would suggest, if the committee agrees with that, that's how we try it. So I've written down, and I don't know if staff want to assist me here, but I quickly wrote down the initials of everyone on here. I can record them, and I would just go around the table. You give me a number for the item that we're discussing. I don't know if staff can assist with that. If you can, it'd be awesome. You got it right in front of you. That's way better than my list. Pardon me? Okay. Okay, so basically how it would go is we'd start at the top of the list. We'd say Big Brothers Big Sisters of Cowichan Valley, And then I'd start with Director Morrison, he would say a number, we'd go around the table, and if we have a majority on the number, we would just say, okay, well, tentatively anyway, that's it. Yeah, just one moment. And in a case, I think there was a few cases last time where we were kind of all hovering around a number, and then, so he said, well, what if we come to an average? And I think that we said, okay, well, you know, some people said 7,000, some people said 4, a bunch of people said 5. Can we settle on 5? Everybody nodded. We put that number in, and we actually got through it. I think it was less than an hour. And frankly, the list was longer 2 years ago. So that's a recommendation, but any questions on that idea, Director Staples?
My only question is if we go through the list once, right, so that we have all the numbers and we just do it without calculating how much we're spending, and then go through it again based on what we've come up with. So that way, you know, if we're $25,000 over, $100,000 over, then we sort of start with the ones that we all agreed on and go back that way to do a second round.
Yeah,
Is
so
that fair?
basically, we would say at the end of it,
Okay.
if we all agreed on it, then those would kind of get moved off the list. We'd sort of assign that number, look what's left over, and then we can fight over the scraps, so to speak.
And then adjust after.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is that acceptable to the committee? Will you give me that shot? No? Director Marsh?
Well, my dog has been in the house for, since we left, and I rode with the chair, so I'm hoping it'll only be an hour.
Well, hopefully we don't have to send somebody to break a window. All right. Are we gonna try this?
Let's try it.
Okay, so Ms. Older, we'll go along with it and see what happens? Okay, we'll start with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. Director Morrison. Okay, so if we can just use our microphones, click your microphone, say a number. and move on.
0.
Thank you. Director Marcotte, we're just going around the table.
0.
0.
5.
1,000?
Yep.
Remember to turn your mic off after. Your mic should work now, yep.
0. 3,000.
5.
5.
0.
5.
3.
5.
3.
I did my homework, 5.
5. All right, we got no majority there, so this may not work as well as I'd hope. We have 7 5s. The majority is, okay, go to the next one. No, we need 8 to have a majority. We're a board of. Okay. Okay, moving, well, we need, okay, please. Thank you. We'll go to Children and Family Council, Director Morrison.
0.
0.
1.
1.
1. 1,000.
1,000.
1.
1.
1.
0.
0.
1.
1.
Oh, sorry, 1. Moving on to Clement Center.
That, I have to recuse myself for this
Okay.
one? My stepson's a client of Clements.
I will as well. My grandson is as well.
Thank you.
Five.
0.
5.
Before I give my answer, I should also say that Director Wilson and I spent a great deal of time reviewing and discussing this, but these answers that I'm giving are at Director Wilson's direction.
Okay.
After those discussions. And to be honest, for most of them, we agreed, but we did have some disagreement. So on this one, he wanted to commit a fairly large amount, so 20.
Okay, that's fair. Director Sari.
15. 0.
Well, I originally had 35, but I'll go with 20 or 15.
Well, just
Zero.
give a number.
Give a
Is
number.
it 20 or 15? They need a.
What's the majority so
Yeah,
far?
you're not going
Never
to get a
mind, give a
majority.
number, come on.
20.
Okay, thank you.
7.
0.
5.
5. All right, well, if we can ask them to come back in, Mr. Elzinga, thank you. Moving on to Cobble Hill Event Society. Oh, sorry, Food Bank, my bad.
Wait for us.
By the time you get there, you'll be seated before it gets to you.
think we should go the other way this time.
Okay, Director Acton.
5.
5.
4.
2.
5. Food bank. Which food bank?
2.
5.
5.
2. 5.
Go on, go on.
I actually, 5.
2.
0.
5.
5. All right, we'll go back the other way, and then we'll just bounce back and forth. Director Morrison on Cobble Hill Event Society.
1.
0.
1.
1.
1. 0.
1.
1.
0.
1.
1.
1.
3.
0. All right, we're going to move to, what's the next one there? Couch and Energy Alternatives. Start with Director Acton.
Could I say what I was going to say before? This is where I feel like we should, this whole process could align with our strategic plan. And then we would be working for the region. But anyway, I will
So
say.
just to respond to that, fair enough. And I
Yeah.
think actually we overlooked the fact that we did not like last year's process and we didn't get a chance to review it and would have maybe made this process better. We're kind of flying by the seat of our pants. I just thought this might be able to take at least a
Yeah,
big chunk
that's
away.
good. Let's keep going.
So,
Yeah,
Let's keep going.
no,
Okay.
no, I understand
But
that, but it's
point well
just-
taken.
Then, because for me, this one would be quite high in that case, probably if we were done our
Yeah.
strategic planning. So I will start with, oh my God, I feel like this is a game show or something.
It is. It's a gong show.
Do you want to call a friend?
Can I?
You can defer to the chair. I'll fill your
No,
slot in for you.
I will say 15.
Thank you, Mr. Director Justice.
20.
Is this the energy one? Yeah. Is this the energy one? 10,000?
10.
0.
20.
20.
0. 0.
0.
10.
0.
0.
0. Moving on to, it's easier to look up there. Yes, Couch and, thank you, Director McGonigal. And this time we'll start with Director Morrison.
3.
0.
1.
I'm not mean, we just don't have it.
3.
3.
0.
3.
1.
0.
Sorry,
0.
Oh, sorry.
thank you.
0.
3.
3.
3.
3.
3. Next we have, I can't see, I'm losing the list here. We'll gotta wait for Director McGonigal to come back in. Quickly, move on. Director Acton, starting with Cowichan Lawn Bowling Club.
0.
0.
0.
Ditto.
0.
0. 0.
0. 0.
0.
0.
0.
0 and 0. We should all hug each other. We have a unanimous vote. Cowichan Therapeutic Riding Association request is 10,000, starting with Director Morrison.
0.
0.
1.
0.
10. 5.
5.
5.
0.
5.
2.
2.
5.
0.
5. All right, moving on to the next one, Cowichan Wooden Boats, Cowichan Valley Museum and Archives. So that's the train station museum, right? Okay, thank you. Start with Director Acton this time.
Come on, girl.
No passive lobbying either, please, directors. Sorry, which one are we on?
I'm confused.
You're one vote of 15. It's not going to change the world.
I try and tell people that, I know. 2.
3.
0.
3.
0.
3. 3.
2. 2.
3.
2.
0.
3.
3. All right, now we're to the Wooden Boat Society. And we'll start with Director Morrison.
0.
0.
0.
A question, because the policy, this one gets a function, is why we were told to stick to the policy.
Well, we can always waive the policy, which we're in the middle of doing, so.
Oh, we are?
We've
What have we
waived the
waived?
policy, our process, because
By,
by
okay.
doing this kind of a round table, it's just the most functional thing we have with
Okay,
only
well,
6 people
I think
following
that
the
the
policy.
museums and the, they so.
Wooden
need
Boat Society.
10.
0. 0.
0.
0.
0.
0.
3.
0.
3.
3.
0. All right, next one is the Glenora Farm, and that's the Wegman Association, right? Yeah. Starting with Director Acton.
Yeah.
There's no pass, no lifeline, no call a friend.
Do you want me to
0.
give you some dice?
0.
0.
5.
0.
5.
5.
3. 5.
0.
1.
0.
0.
0. I'm just going to pause for 1 sec. Directors, I think that this seems awkward, but we're all making our personal judgments, so through the lenses that we all have. And just because we're just saying numbers doesn't mean we haven't got good rationale behind it, but I just think that this will expedite the process. So don't feel bad or awkward about how it's going. This is the judgments you've made in looking at the whole list about what you think there's value to through your own perspective. So I shouldn't have stopped. So Director Nicholson, and then we'll resume.
I don't feel bad because I've read all the applications, and I thought that the quality of the applications was really much better than when I started 4 years ago or whatever. But that said, I think that if you're making decisions just based on whether you know the organization and like it or not, or it fits with your values, and you're not making it in a transparent, rational way that you can, that provides some accountability to the community, then I don't think we're doing our job. And I'm really disappointed in this process because I think that it really speaks to the fact that we're not doing our job.
Well, that's your opinion, and I would vociferously and aggressively disagree with you, and I find that quite assaulting, actually, because I think everyone around this table is committed to reading those applications and made their own value judgments, and for you to throw the rest of the board under the bus and say that you don't think that's a fair process is really unfair.
Well, what I really want to say is that we advertised this regional grant and aid process, and we were clear about what things that we were going to use to evaluate them. So if we're not evaluating them on those criteria, then I think there's a problem.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. Which one do we have next? Inclusive Leadership Cooperative, and, oh, we just did Glenora Farms. So Inclusive Leadership, we'll start with Director Morrison.
5.
0.
1.
0.
0. 5.
5.
3. 0.
0.
0.
7.
2.
5.
0. Next one is Cocos Island Music Festival Society, Director Acton.
2.
3.
3.
3.
0.
3.
3.
2. 0.
3.
2.
0.
3.
3. Next one is Ladysmith and District Historical Society, Director Morrison.
0.
0.
1.
3.
0. 0.
2.
1.
1.
1.
0.
2.
2.
2.
2. Moving on, Lake Cowichan 75 and Beyond Society, Director Acton.
0.
2.
2.
0. Oh, sorry.
0. 2.
2.
2. 2.
2.
1.
0.
And 5.
2. Literacy Now Cowichan, starting with Director Morrison.
5.
0.
2.
2.
5. 4.
5.
5. 2.
5.
2.
2.
5.
2.
2. Providence Farm, starting with Director Acton.
7,500.
5,000.
17,000.
6.
5.
5.
10.
8.
8. 0.
2.
2.
0.
5,000.
5,000. And moving on to Red Willow Women's Society, Director Morrison.
5,000.
0.
5.
0.
0. 6,000.
5.
0.
0.
5.
0.
0.
5.
15.
5. All right, Salmonos Marsh Wildlife Society, starting with Director Acton.
3.
3.
0.
0.
0.
0.
3.
2.
0. 0.
3.
1.
0.
3.
3. And Thetis Island Community Association.
We should take that one off.
Director Morrison.
5,000.
0.
2.
5.
3. 0.
5.
5.
10.
5.
10.
5.
5.
10. Last one, Vancouver Island Wind Sports Society, starting with Director Acton.
What are they asking for?
2.
2.
0.
4.
0.
0.
2.
2.
0. 0.
2.
1.
0.
4.
4. So I'm not sure how many we actually got over a 50% agreement on a number. But I wonder if we can just take maybe a 10-minute recess and give a couple minutes. The other thing that we may want to do is look at the averages of the amounts, including the zeros, to see what the totals are of the ones we may have agreed on, and then what the averages are on the ones we didn't agree on. It might get us around a number
No,
we
we
need
simply
to.
add up the whole amount divided by 15, and then we come to the figure.
That's what I mean, that's an
Like
average.
The zeros and whatever was.
Yeah, exactly, that's the
Yeah,
average.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Director Acton?
The average, okay, or like, say, so for example, if it was mostly 2,000s, but there's a 5,000, you would count that 5
Yeah.
as a 2, right?
No, I'm done.
Like,
No.
it doesn't become a,
No, you
We're
have
not-
to
we're
account
gonna be
for-
at-
but we're gonna do the average.
Okay, so let's
Okay.
just take about 10 minutes. Let's let staff look at the ones where we may have majority, and then we'll come back. It's okay, we said 4:40, so we got a couple minutes here, but gonna push the button a couple times here. So we don't have Director Nicholson yet. If we just give another minute here and then we'll go. So we'll just wait till Director Nicholson's back and then Ms. Solder is going to explain to us their thought process. Does anybody know where Director Nicholson may be? Oh, Terrace. Okay. All right. So thank you to our finance staff for doing that so expeditiously. And I'll turn it over to you for maybe some insights. Thank you.
So looking at all of this, the dollar amounts that were given out, I took the median value, so that's the middle value. And I can make it a little bit bigger, but it's gonna go off the page with the totals. So the median value is the middle value of all of the values. So that would be the one that received the most in most cases, or was in the middle of when the votes were really spaced out. It's just it ends up being the middle value. I'm not going to explain it well. And then there's an average. So where there's a majority, I've noted there were only 8 majorities. And the total of the median values is $50,000. So that is still definitely within the budget. And the average total is not a very round number, but 57,833.
And for reference, there's no obligation to spend the entire budget, and that could be reserved for opportunities that may come forward down the road. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, there could be opportunities. There's about 17,000 to the 75, and I realize it could be up to 75. But I did hear Director Smith in the, what are they saying for the Thetis Island? What have you got for Thetis Island?
5.
That, maybe Director Smith, you can explain it again, what you were telling us in the Director's Lounge. Because I think that's a good point.
I think what I was referring to is that in the last 8 years, $1.7 million has been given out to regional grant and aids, and in that 1.7 million, there has been no allocation to Area G, and Thetis Island is in Area G. So I think that other areas have received allocations that have equaled a fair amount of money, and I would like to continue to petition for the Thetis Island as part of Area G to receive a percentage that would look towards equaling out some of the funds that have gone to other areas.
Thank you. I've got you on the list, and I've got Director of Justice, I've got a speaker's list. I'm going to go back to Director Yanni DiNardo. Was that all you wanted to introduce for consideration?
Yeah, I wanted to introduce sort of the fairness. When I looked at the overall, I wanted to make sure that all areas got a little piece, and then hearing the unfairness over the years, I was just throwing that into the mix because I did listen to that.
All right, so I do have a bit of a speaker's list here. Next, I have Director of Justice, then Kuhn, then Acton, then Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wanting to inquire why there was several of the options that don't have a median. Is it because the
median was
column's not wide
0.
enough?
The median was 0.
No, I don't think so. Is it?
Yep.
Okay, so, all right, I was just wondering whether the column wasn't wide enough to show the...
Well, you can scroll back, but if you look at the values, the median was 0, and then you can see the average beside the where there was no majority. You can see it there. So the median was 0.
Okay,
and the
thank you.
Thank you. So there is a few paths forward, but I'll go through the speakers list, and then we can. I do have another suggestion. I don't know if it'll be helpful or not, but I'll go through the speakers list, and then I'll go after Director Morrison. Director Kuhn.
I'd like to make a motion that we disperse us, as it's pointed out at the table, and leave the remainder as a carry forward. Thank you.
So that is a motion. Do we have a seconder? He said the median. Sorry, I know, and I appreciate that, but Director McGonigal, are you seconding that?
I will second it to get it on the floor.
So there's a can of worms and we just cracked it open. Thank you, Director McGonigal. So we do have a motion on the floor.
You're very welcome.
Do we want to discuss the motion? And I do have a speakers list I'll go back to. So is this on the motion then, Director Acton? Director Acton.
It kind of ties in with what I was gonna say, I think, but you're saying with the median, so there's a bit of a problem though, because some of them, for, the median is less than the average, so, and I think we should pick whichever one is the highest. For example, the food bank, the median's $5,000 and then average is 3,800, because we haven't reached they're all very low. We were really cheap. So I think we should pick the highest from both sides.
Director Kuhn, please. Well, we've heard that, and I think everybody understands we do not, we do not have to spend it all. So, but points well made to the motion. No more to the Director Justice. Please to the motion. I have a speakers list that I will resume on the general topic after, but Director Justice to the motion.
For clarification, the motion was made for the median and not the average?
Yes.
Okay, well, I would not support that. I would support the average.
Thank you. Any other? Director Salmon.
I would not support that. Support the.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Director Marsh?
So this motion is that the $50,000, as in the median thing, is passed and distributed to those folks, and then the rest is what?
Remains in the budget. That was the
Okay.
motion that Director Kuhn made. It's been seconded, so it's on the floor. So if somebody would like to,
I mean, the can of worms is open, so I don't know if I should let my worms out of the can or not. I mean, so, I mean, I think I'm going to, sorry. I'd like to amend the motion.
you're welcome to move an amendment.
I'd like to move the amend the motion that we accept this as it is, and that we add, how much do you have for the Clements Center?
Oh.
Well, sorry. Everybody's moaning, so this is probably a big can of
Okay,
worms.
so if we discuss the Clement Center, then Director Staples and Director McGonigal have to declare a conflict. Thank you both.
Okay, well, sorry, I'm just gonna try it. How much do you have under the median for the Clements?
5,000.
So I would like to raise that to 20,000.
Thank you. Is there a
Because further-
seconder for that?
Yeah, I need a seconder. I don't have one.
Seeing none, the motion does not move forward.
Okay.
So can we invite Directors McGonigal and Staples back into the room?
At least they're getting a little bit of exercise.
Yeah.
A little new view.
We'll wait till they're seated. Don't want to miss a moment of this exciting process. All right, so back to the motion that's on the floor. Director Acton and then Director Smith. She did have her hand up before, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find this a little bit problematic, even on the average one, now that I look at it a little bit closer, because we're giving money to those who didn't have the majority. So I think we should take the no majorities just off the table and then decide by looking at where we are, because that was pretty clear around the table that they didn't qualify for our regional grant need. So I would vote against either one.
Thank you. Ms. Solder.
I guess with respect to that, just for clarification, there's only 8 that actually have majority. I'm wondering if you're meaning those where the median is 0 would be taken off of the table.
Can I, if I may, make a suggestion, and I'm going to go back to Director Smith, but if we take essentially, well, ones where we have a majority, that's basically a majority vote for a number. So I would argue that the zeros and the ones where we have a majority number, if we remove those, we can come down to them. However, you know, my hope is that we could ask for, look at the list, look at the median number, that's what's been moved by Director Kuhn, and we could essentially pull, if you will, like we would on certain resolutions that we wanted to debate more, because I think Director Smith did make a good point. Thank you, Director Yanni DiNardo, but again, Ms. Solder, thank you for highlighting those for us. And we do have a motion on the floor, which is to award the median to all of the groups as presented, and to save the rest for potential future opportunities. I guess put it into the, well, I don't know, Mr. Berry, do you remember what it was basically to leave it unspent in the budget. So at some point. So if there's no more to the motion, I will just call the question on it, and then we can move forward. We do have a motion on the floor, so I do have to call the question. All those in favor? So that's opposed? So that's defeated. So back to my speakers list. I got Director Justice, I believe. Director Kuhn.
No.
Okay, Director Acton. Oh, did you? Okay. Director Morrison.
So I think we should really, I'm not going to suggest we reconsider that last motion, but I'm going to put this to you, that we went through a process, and that's part of why we should be having the discussions around this table and not in separate meeting rooms, because when I said I'd heard it all, I'd heard that very discussion. I can bring up Area F, Area I, outlying areas that haven't received a lick of funds. Right? So, okay, so you got to put this one back in because it hasn't received a lick of funds. You know, so we're changing the parameters of the discussion after we've all voted. So, like, that's completely unfair. We're turning the whole process, as flawed as it might have been, on its head by saying, oh, yeah, but what about this? We can't go there. Like, that really, it spoils the process. We did something that was imperfect to the best of our ability. And if we start introducing other factors after we're going to be here all night. So I as imperfect as the average or the median was, they are a means to distribute some funds, and perhaps we're going to be looking again at the regional grants and aid or farming it out or something. But we can't start adding new factors in after we all gave our best effort on what we did when we voted. So
Thank you.
I have a motion.
Thank you, but, sorry, Mr. Berry, does my speakers list supersede motions? Because I have two people of, yeah,
I would
it
go
does.
with your speakers
Okay,
list.
so I have Directors Yanni DiNardo, Salmon, Acton, and Marsh.
Well, I thank you, Director Morrison, because you're right, because that was annoying last time we did that, but I just heard a little unfairness in the back room. I had to spit it out. Why, I wouldn't mind making a motion on the average and getting it over with, and then whatever's left over. So I'd like to move that we go with the average.
So that's been moved and seconded. Discussion, I do have a speakers list. Do we want me to go through that speakers list now that we have a motion on the floor, or do we start a new list to go to the motion? So I'll go through, if you want to speak to the motion, if not, I'll come back to it. So I'll go to Director Marsh and Director Smith on the motion.
Yes, I'd like to speak to the motion, and I'm afraid to speak to it properly. I'm going to have to look this way. I noticed that a couple things as we mentioned, were lower, and one was dropped off altogether. That was fairly important to some people. So I think that 57,000 leaves us almost 20,000 if we pass this for emerging issues that might come up, and I think it would get us home. And I just think that between now and next year, and possibly in our strategic planning, we need to consider, do we want to do grants and aid and as a region, or do we want them to do them sub-regionally? And I don't think we're going to make that answer today.
No.
I found this, I felt sad doing it this way, even though I appreciate the expediency, because people spent a lot of time and we didn't actually talk about the merits, and we weren't looking at, some of the things we might have done otherwise. But I think this would be a good compromise, and we could all get home, and our staff could get home, and we could hopefully do it better next term.
Thank you. And I'm going to go back, like I'm looking at the numbers, and, if we're to express the will of the board, there was a majority on, was it 7 or 8 of them? 8 of them? 8. And then if we went with the average for the rest of them, we'd actually be around the $60,000 mark. So I'm not comfortable with the motion as it is on the floor, because we had a majority on 8. If we agree to that number, set those aside, and go with the average for the rest, then we're out of here. So
if
anyway,
the-
I'll go to Director Smith after, and then Director Staples.
It looked like the mover might be willing to try a friendly amendment to what you said. Am I right?
That is not a friendly amendment,
No.
Mr. Chair.
No.
That's
Sorry,
not being
Director
said.
McGonigal, thank you. Yeah. So, and the chair, it will, if I move that forward, you could call a point of order, but I wasn't accepting that as a friendly amendment. Director Smith.
I cannot support the motion as it is because there's 1, 2, 3 items that are, that the majority indicated they wanted 0. And they popped over into the average in amounts that the majority said 0. So I can't support the average amount because of that.
Thank you. I don't believe there was any majorities that were 0. That was, the median was 0. Yes.
Sorry, I meant the medium
Yeah.
was 0. It was the indication, and now we have averages that pop over. If we had known at the very beginning that we were going to start looking at averages, then we all could have just gone, I put in 50,000 for this, and I put in 50,000
Yeah,
for that.
I hear you.
So the
And you could skew
averages,
it.
yeah,
Yep.
the averages kind of skew it.
Thank you. Director Staples.
I've changed my mind about 15 times already. I think that I would want to defeat this motion and try another motion based on what I've just heard. And to speak to it, I think that one of the things that I see reflected in this, in the averages, but I like the idea of going with the median for the ones that had the majority and the averages for the ones that don't. I prefer that, is that it is reflective of what we were talking about in the beginning, which was that disbursement around the community. And so I feel that I can support that, but I won't support this motion as it stands.
Thank you. Do we have any more speakers to the motion, which is to award the average to all of the applicants? No, and I got to call the question. We're just following process here, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Directors Yanni, DiNardo, and Salmon. All those against? Do you want to record those? No. So can you hold your hands up if you're against, please? Yeah, we're good. Defeated.
Introduce your motion.
So, sorry, Director Staples.
No, go ahead if you're.
No, you go ahead. I hadn't had a chance to write it down, and I'm pretty tight on process.
I just want to make sure I get this right, though. So it's to move the median on the ones that have the majority, and to move the average on the ones that do not have the majority.
Well, that's an option that we have available to us, but we did just hear that it's kind of awkward to award the median to where the average,
average.
where the median was actually 0.
Other than where the average is 0.
That's a good one.
That's it.
That was
That's
actually
it.
the
That's it.
resolution I was going to put forward, but so basically, so let me get this straight. And this is terrible process, but it would be to move that we award the median amount to each of the ones where was a majority, award the average to those that was not a majority, other than those where the median was 0, and those would be 0.
Yes.
Is that what I'm hearing?
I move that. Second then.
Sorry, moved by Director Staples and seconded by Director Morrison. I'm just going to ask for a pause for a moment while staff tries to calculate what that looks like. Yes. Just a moment, just, it would be instructive for us to see the value. So that works out to 53,033. So that has been moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion. Director Marsh.
So I think I will support this because I think it's just going to get harder to come to an agreement. But what I did appreciate about the motion that I just helped to defeat was that I was thinking about the push for proportional representation of both across the country and in the province. And I think that other one allowed a little bit more for that. Like, we don't all have to be the same, and it still got us under, but it was defeated, so I'll support this.
Thank you.
Well, I'm just sad to see that something that added up to $7,000 will now get nothing.
But, you know,
I got it.
Thank you. If I may, Director Marsh, though, however, if everybody gave a 0 and 2 people gave 50,000, it disproportionately skews the average. So I think that that's where that clarity came from. Director McGonigal.
Yeah.
Just a friendly amendment, I hope, that those in the average column be rounded to the nearest $10. Well, it's $733.
Let's say $100.
Whichever you choose, and I will accept that as a friendly amendment.
Sorry, does the mover and seconder accept that as a friendly
To
amendment?
the closest
No.
$100.
So there's no friendly amendment there. Do you want to introduce that as an amendment? That's moved?
Yes, I accept that as an amendment.
No, you can't do,
I
we need
can't
a
do that?
seconder. You can second the amendment, yes.
I can second the amendment.
Yes, so now the amendment is on the floor. So if Ms. Solder will just take a moment. There
I'm
you
s-
go.
I'm sorry.
So it's
She's like a
clean.
whiz.
I think it's cleaner.
Thank you. So that's been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the question on the amendment. Sorry, Director Salmon.
Understand, so, there's one column, there's missing, it doesn't say majority or no majority for number 11 there, what's that?
Thank you.
No majority.
It's not to the motion. It's not, or to the amendment, but. All right. It just, zeros show up as dashes, that's all.
So
Thank you.
I do have a question.
Sorry, if you would put your hand up and I'll get you on the speakers list. So, Director Marsh.
Thank you,
Well,
Yoda.
Sorry, from Chair's prerogative, we have a lot of side
Yes,
conversations
I know.
going, and I think it
Okay.
bothers me. Director
Yours is
Marsh and then
taking longer
Director
than mine
Staples.
would've. So I'm aware of that now. Now I forget what I was aware of. Oh, do we have to say something about our policy since under this, what we've done, we now have the Couch and Wooden Boat Society receiving,
Zero.
oh, it's receiving 0?
Yes.
Yes.
Why does that say, oh, because it's not highlighted in yellow. Okay, I'm good. I think I can't think
Director
anymore.
Staples to close on the amendment. Let's make it germane to the amendment if we could. Okay, I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. So this is the resolution as amended. Anybody want to speak to that? I'm seeing. Okay, people are quizzically looking at me, but I'm not seeing hands, so I'm going to, Director Nicholson.
Well, I just wondered if you could just highlight the ones that we're voting, like, what are we voting for?
The ones in yellow.
So almost everything gets some money.
Except for the Wooden Boat Society and the farms.
And the lawn bowling club shouldn't be yellow, and the,
Yes, they should, because the median value was 0, and that was what the motion was. So we're going.
oh, I see, so
for-
we're giving them 0. So everything that's,
No, we've got a motion on the floor.
okay,
I
I've
was
got
about
it, so
to-
everything is highlighted and it just shows the number
So,
that
Mr.
they're
Barry,
getting.
would you like to read the motion out, or shall I go through it. I've got it. It's committed to memory. So what we've moved here is that we award the median values where there was a majority. We award the average value rounded to the nearest $100, because that was the amendment, where there is no majority, unless the median value was 0, and in that case, we're awarding 0. So that's the motion that's on the floor. Okay, to the motion. Director Nicholson. That's the motion as amended, sorry.
I guess I just have a hard time with the way this has fallen out, because there are, however many there were, 17, how many, 17? 22 applications. Everyone except 4 are receiving funding. Is that clear? Is that true? And I think we're missing an opportunity to fund the couch and energy alternatives, which is a really important initiative from a climate change perspective, and I find that very odd.
Thank you. All right, so we've reopened it because I have a whole bunch of speakers on the list again. So, sorry, process dictates if someone wants to speak to the motion that's on the floor, they might. Director Staples and then Director Justice.
I think Ms. Solder has just made this possibly not something we need to discuss further. If you want to just, is it okay if I just ask her? Because she just changed something?
Ms. Solder, if you have.
Which I was trying to figure out, but
So
now
I just
don't have
opened
to
it up again and counted the zeros, and there are 8 zeros under couch and energy alternatives,
Which
and
is a
8
majority.
is a majority.
Thank you.
Okay. Because I have this, I mean, I don't like this process at all, and it's no offense to, I understand that it's a process that we have, and I want us to revisit this process.
We were supposed to do that last year, unfortunately, we did not.
Yeah, and I recognize that, because I also agree that we are missing out, and I think that that is one of the most important ones on here, and so I would like to have more discussion around it.
So can
so
to the
that's-
committee and to you as the speaker right now, and we have a motion on the floor, we
I know.
can vote on it. Directors are free to bring forward discussion on points they want to make or motions after the fact. And I know some of you are going to roll your eyes and sigh and be, I honestly think that to be 5 after 10 or 10 after 5, we've done well to get to this point, and I'm happy to have somebody bring forward some consideration of ones that were eliminated, but we do have a group here that we've discussed. And I think we should look at voting on those after the last speaker on this list. I'll call the question, and then if anybody wants to discuss the specifics on the grants and aid that may not have been awarded, then I would, entertain that. That's the prerogative of each director to bring forward a motion or discussion after that. Director
Thank you.
Justice.
Well, having heard what I just heard from you, I'll wait.
Thank you. Director McGonigal.
Just a question on the number in column Y. With the amendment, does that change that number?
That's the number with the
That is
amendment.
the number with the amendment?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Carruthers, you gave me some advice that we should actually clean up the motion to basically say that the funding amounts are the ones highlighted in yellow, and we can record that for the record. Did you want me to read through each item and each number?
I think that would be, you've used a formula to come to your conclusions. I think your resolution should simply state the organization and the amount that you're funding, rather than having your resolution try to articulate a formula around a spreadsheet. I think that's not going to be very clear for your readers in the future that are ever looking to backtrack.
So basically, and it would be, the intent of the motion would be the same, it would just be much cleaner, would be that Big Brothers Big Sisters Cowichan Valley be awarded 3,000, Children Family Council be awarded 1,000. Sorry, Mr.
Chair,
Mr.
I
Barry.
will go the other approach, but I was going to go where the CAO also did. We've got this motion on the floor. If you have it in agreement, if it passes, I was going to say staff will bring forward exactly what you see as the recommendation to the board. Yeah, because this is what you've done. The minutes have to show what you've done.
Thank you.
What you've said, but we'll come forward with the proper amounts.
Sorry, I have Director Acton and then Nicholson.
My question is just for the Clement Center. Did you average it out by 13? No, I just want, or 15? But should it be at 13 when there were two people not present, so theirs didn't count? I think it should be 13.
So those people were here when we did the numbers around table, though. All 15 directors were here when we,
2 directors did absent
oh,
themselves.
right, that's correct, good point. So, and there was another one where we had somebody that had to, Director Staples stepped out for another one, did she not? No?
Tim for
Okay. Oh, and Tim, so Trailblazers was 14 then. Okay. So, Director Nicholson. Thank you, Director Acton.
So I want people to be clear that if we're voting for the highlighted ones, we're voting for often averages that are higher than the median for those that did not receive a majority.
That's fine, let's.
When the median was 50,000 and the number we have is 54, that's exactly correct. Some were getting, based on the median or on the average, we're getting more than what the median amount was, yes.
Which I think defeats.
Thank you. So I'm calling the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Directors Nicholson and Justice opposed, that passes. We couldn't because they were in conflict. If we can wait till the other directors come in. So you should have actually just stepped out to vote on those two.
Yeah, that's on the two,
So,
on the one. There's just
Well,
one.
on the one for you and 2 for Director McGonigal,
Okay.
but just for clarity, because you weren't in the room, this will come to the board as a specific list. At that time, we can pull the individual items, and there will be a vote at the board.
Okay.
Director Marsh.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Will you entertain another motion? So I would like to move that we award the Cowichan Energy Alternative $7,000.
Thank you. That's been seconded by Director Acton.
May I speak to
Yep.
it? Which I feel awkward doing it because nobody's got to speak to anything before, so that's another thing to note. But I think the pump, one of the things that I'm frustrated as chairing the Environment Committee in North Cowichan is that we have this great plan. It's a fantastic plan. And corporately, we're doing very well, but in the community, we're not. The community's not reaching the targets. And so I think that we should fund this pump that people can try out biodiesel because of the whole thing of diverting it from our sewers and our pipes, and because it's green, clean fuel. So that's all I'll say.
Thank you. I believe I had Director Yanni DiNardo next. No. Sorry, thank you. And did I see Director Acton? Sorry. Okay, Director Justice.
Yeah, I'm going to support this. I would just note that one of the principles for awarding these grants is that the benefits should be regional in scope. And I think this is one of the very, very few ones that's actually regional in scope. So for that reason, and also for the reasons that Councillor Marsh just gave, related to our need to be responsive to our climate issues, I'm supporting this.
I think that through the climate issue lens, if you look at the service lens, I think people in the north end of the regional district might disagree or argue the regional point. Sorry, Director Harriet, thank you. It's been a long day.
I'm not going to support the motion. For one thing, there's several on there that we could go item by item and say, well, and there's ones that I think are really a regional one, like the Therapeutic Riding Association, that I've worked with that as a group and see how much value that is to people who are in real need.
I appreciate your perspective, but you have to understand legislatively, any
Yes.
director has the right to
Yeah.
make a motion, and
But
it's not my place
I'm just
to.
concerned now, I don't want to see us go through every one again now because we have voted on every one
That's,
previously. Thank
that's
you.
absolutely a good point, but it's, as far as process goes, and legislatively, it's every director's right to put a motion on the floor and have it considered by the board. I have Director McGonigal.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I cannot support this either, as the majority voted for 0 on this when we went roundtable, so I will be sticking
And then the
with
vote
that.
would reflect that if that's the case. So I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? And opposed? 6. So it carries. I guess we're short 2 seats. Thank you. Any other motions before we move on? So that makes us, then with that, we would be up to $61,000, I believe, Ms. Solder. All right, so that takes care of that item. I don't see any more motions coming forward. Mr. Barry?
Question period.
Thank you. Question period. Seeing no one, I want to make just a thank you very much to our finance staff especially, and Ms. Solder for facilitating what was an awkward process. And I agree, and I think that we all agree that we need to have a discussion around grants and aid as a subject moving forward, whether or not we do them at all, or what policy we do them out under. We'll have that argument another day. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Director Salmon, seconded by Director Marcotte. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. We're adjourned.
And thank you.